In this video, we're going to take a look at how to solve one-step equations. The key is to undo whatever is being done to x. If, for example, I have x minus 4.3 equaling negative 6.1, I'm going to think about dividing the equation into two parts, and I'm going to look and find x and see that 4.3 is being subtracted from x. To undo subtracting by 4.3, I'm going to choose to add 4.3. And using the golden rule that whatever I do to one side, I also need to do to the other side, I'm going to add 4.3 to the right-hand side. In adding 4.3 to both sides, negative 4.3 plus 4.3 adds out to 0 or cancels out. So all I'm left with on the left-hand side is the x. So I know x will equal whatever negative 6.1 plus 4.3 is. So I can think about this as 6.1 minus 4.3. So I'm going to need to borrow 1 from here. So I have 11 minus 3 is going to equal 8. 5 minus 4 is going to be 1. So I'm going to end up with negative 1.8. So what that means, if I check it, negative 1.8 minus 4.3, if I check, will indeed equal negative 6.1. I am going to be very strict that this is the format that I want you to follow. I'm going to recommend that you draw these vertical lines just so that way you know that I have to put a plus 4.3 on the left, a plus 4.3 on the right, but these are somewhat optional. I do have to see that you're adding 4.3 to the left and adding 4.3 to the right in order to be able to work out the problem. So this is the format that I want you to use. This is the step that I want you to show in this particular mode. What happens if I start off with x plus 5 is equal to negative 2? Well, I'm going to use the same format, dividing into two parts. Instead of having x plus 5, I undo that by subtracting 5. Whatever I do to one side, I also need to show on the other. 5 minus 5 adds out to 0. That leaves me with x is going to equal what negative 2 minus 5 is, which is going to be negative 7. So if I think and want to check, negative 7 plus 5 is equal to negative 2. So this checks. Okay, so I end up with the solution x equals negative 7. Now as a side note, this may also be written as negative 2 is equal to x plus 5, which I can take what I have on the left and what I have on the right and switch it if you want to start off with the x's on the left-hand side, or I can also show the work out using the same format. I would end up with x equals negative 7, which instead of reading negative 7 equals x, I would like that flipped around as x equals negative 7. But these are really both the same answer, whichever way that you choose to write it. Okay. If I start off with the equation, 3 times x is equal to negative 120. To undo 3 times x, I'm going to choose to divide by 3. And most times, you're going to see this written as just the division as a fraction, because what's 3 over 3? Well, it's going to be left with 1x, or most times that 1 is not even written, it's just left as x. And then I know that negative 120 divided by 3 is going to be negative 40. Once again, I can check. Is negative 40 times 3 negative 120? And it really is. Negative 120 is equal to negative 120, so this checks. Let's suppose I said negative 3x is equal to negative 120. Taking the same idea, if I divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, negative 3 divided by negative 3 just leaves me with x. On the right-hand side, I would end up with a negative divided by a negative, which is positive. 120 divided by 3 would give me 40. So just be careful as you're working with these, both the addition, subtraction, but also especially multiplication, division, with what to do with the negative signs. It's very easy to forget about a negative sign, so please make sure you're aware of that. Last but not least, let's look at division. What happens if I have the opposite of x over 8 is equal to 7? In this case, I'm going to take x divided by 8 multiplied by 8 over 1, so the 8's will cancel out, but also beware of this negative sign. I need to make this negative so that both signs will cancel out, leave me with a positive x. So what I'm going to do is multiply 7 by negative 8 and get an answer of negative 56. So basically, what you're keeping in mind is if I'm adding a number to x, I'm going to end up subtracting a number. If I'm subtracting a number, I'm going to add a number. So they undo each other, the subtraction and addition. When it comes to multiplication and division, if I'm multiplying by a number, I want to make sure I divide. If I'm dividing by a number, I make sure I multiply. They're what are called related operations, okay, or opposite operations. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. Looking forward to practicing.